Hello and welcome back to the GCN Racing News Show. This week in the world of racing, we learned that even the GOAT can get it wrong sometimes. More on that in a moment. We also learned that sometimes you just got to make the best of what you've got. Alina Amiusic lost her time trial bikes on the way over to Sweden for the Vårgårda team time trial, so had to leave the ramp on her road bike. But she was still part of the 4 riders that crossed the line en route to a very respectable 6th place, which is mighty impressive if you ask me. Now, coming up in this week's show, as well as running through the latest team transfers, an injury update and the highlights from a very busy week of racing, we'll also be discussing whether road cycling has a safety problem. First though, the Vuelta at Burgos, a 5-day race often used by riders as a warm-up for the Vuelta España, took place last week. And in case you haven't been following it on GCN+, here is what went down in northern Spain. Stage 2 of the race was overshadowed by a nasty high-speed pile-up in the final kilometre. Jumbo-Visma's David Decker lost control of his bike when riding over a speed bump, subsequently causing an epic high-speed crash with 8 riders forced to abandon the race due to their injuries. Decker's teammate, Timo Russen, ultimately won the stage, with the team securing a 1-2-3 as well, because most riders had crashed. They were the only ones effectively able to avoid it. The third stage to Vårgårda proved to be decisive. Pavel Sivakov attacked off the front of the bunch on a big climb and bridged across to the remaining trio of escapees, with only AG Desert Citroën's Bastien Tranchant in just his 3rd day as a stagiaire, which is basically like an apprentice, able to hold his wheel. Sivakov's eyes were firmly set on the general classification, and despite his tender age, Tranchant was well aware of this, sitting on his compatriot's wheel and saving energy for the sprint. The pair came to the line 30 seconds ahead of the bunch, and Tranchant, with his fresher legs, duly outsprinted Sivakov to claim a surprise stage victory. The work-experienced boy should land himself a full contract with that, you would think. The final stage saw the riders take on 170 k's to Lagunas de Niela with a summit finish. João Almeida looked to be struggling with 1.5k to go and was briefly dropped from the lead group as they closed in on the summit. However, he clawed his way back onto the group and then attacked with 500 to go, outsprinting Lopez to take the win. Sivakov finished just a handful of seconds down, meaning his overall lead remained intact by 35 seconds to Almeida, with Lopez rounding out the podium in 3rd. Now, that aforementioned pile-up in Burgos, plus another one at the perennially risky Tour of Poland, have sparked another big debate about safety and what can be done to better protect the riders. Some are of the opinion that the UCI and the race organisers aren't doing enough. The Riders' Union tweeted that riders would like to see a higher level of safety and accountability from the UCI. Eduardo Affini, who narrowly escaped the carnage in Burgos, echoed these sentiments, and in a tweet he said that allowing a speed bump in the last kilometre is a disgrace and unacceptable. Others, however, like Burgos' race director Marcus Moral, have been keen to shift the blame. In a statement following the crash on stage 2, Moral blamed the incident on David Decker, and while he's since retracted this accusation, he's still unwilling to take full responsibility for the crash, saying it's everyone's fault. Now, he does perhaps have kind of a point. Decker crashed on a speed bump whilst on the wheel of 3 of his teammates. Did they not call it out and warn those behind, or perhaps did he not hear? However, in the same breath, you also have to say that deep inside a full peloton at 75 km/h plus, no amount of shouting and warning is going to keep everyone in the bunch safe over an aggressive speed bump in a finale. So a crash was perhaps sadly inevitable. Now, in a poll we posted on the GCN app in the wake of these crashes, the vast majority of you said that you'd like to see the UCI implement more rigorous rules that races follow to the letter, lest they be demoted from their current spot on the calendar. Now, I think of all the options presented, that definitely seems like the most sensible one. However, I do sympathise with race organisers. I have to say I worry about making life even harder for them. I think perhaps they have it tougher than anyone in the whole professional cycling ecosystem in terms of simply surviving. But be very interested to hear your thoughts. What do you make of this safety debate? Is there an underlying problem that needs to be fixed, or are crashes just a part of bike racing? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section. Now back to the racing now, and the Women's World Tour continued with the Postnord Vårgårda WestSweden, and the first of two races, the annual and slightly unorthodox team time trial. Trek Segafredo won ahead of SD Works and Team DSM. In the road race that followed, there was that aforementioned surprise disqualification for Marianne Vos. Having won the race, the commissaires took the courageous decision to throw her out of the race for briefly using the now banned puppy paws position where her forearms were resting on the tops of her handlebars. Now, while it might seem frustrating and petty, them's the rules, and Vos calmly, impressively in fact, accepted it, in public at least. I guess when you've won as much as she has, what's another World Tour one-day race in your palmares at the end of the day? However, what should cause some debate, hopefully among commissaires as well, is the fact that she was DQ'd after the race had finished, and the incident happened with 12k to go while Vos was making that key selection. So how much did her presence in those final Ks alter the race after the infringement? Because to me, it seems a little bit like a referee in football belatedly realising they'd missed a foul and so awarding a penalty 20 minutes after the match has finished. Now, refs, of course, miss stuff all the time, but when the game's finished, that's all done, right? So again, let us know your thoughts in the comments section. Anyway, ultimately, it left a slightly nonplussed Audrey Cordon-Rago taking the top spot. Perhaps not the ideal circumstances to take your first World Tour victory, but a win is a win. Pfeiffer Georgi and Valérie Demey were also duly promoted to second and third. The Tour of Poland this year was a race for the sprinters, with no fewer than 5 of the 7 stages concluding in a bunch sprint. No one rider dominated, and so we saw 5 different winners, one for each stage. Olaf Koy, Gerben Thijssen, Pascal Ackermann, Phil Bauhaus, and then Arnaud Demar taking the final stage. Mark Cavendish, meanwhile, notably came away empty-handed. Bora Hansgrohe's Sergio Higuita continued his impressive year by winning Stage 3 in a sprint from a small group of around 13 riders. The Colombian took the race lead as a result and held it until the Stage 6 uphill time trial, where Team DSM's Thymen Arensman came out on top, taking his first ever pro win in the process. The Ineos duo of Magnus Sheffield and Ethan Hayter finished 6 and 8 seconds down respectively, taking the remaining 2 spots on the day's podium. Higuita, meanwhile, finished down in 16th place, and so Hayter pulled on the leader's jersey and held a gap of 11 seconds over Arensman through the final stage, wrapping up the overall classification, which was his first World Tour stage race win. The 4-stage CIC-Tour Féminin International des Pyrénées also took place last week. It was won by a flying Christa Dobel-Hickok of EF. In fact, Dobel-Hickok won 2 out of 4 stages, and her EF team won Stage 1's team time trial to boot. Only Silvia Zanardi of B-Pink got a look in on the final stage. And Lotto Soudal scored 196 much-needed UCI points in the Tour of Leuven thanks to a win from Victor Campenaerts. He outsprinted his late breakaway companion Zdeněk Štýbar 20 seconds ahead of a small bunch led home by Alexander Kristoff. Campenaerts' teammate Jesper de Boist also scored 60 points for 4th. Now, speaking of Alexander Kristoff, he's just signed a 3-year contract with 2nd Division pro team Uno X, which will see him racing until the ripe old age of 38. Biggest name to move teams so far, though, is the Flying Dutchwoman Lorena Wiebes, who has just won 2 stages at the Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift. She's set to leave Team DSM at the end of the year and join SD Works on a 3-year deal. The 23-year-old hadn't quite reached the end of her current contract with Team DSM, but due to a special clause, she has been allowed to leave. Israel Premier Tech delivered a surprise this week as well by announcing the mid-season transfer of Dylan Teuns from Bahrain Victorious. In unprecedented fashion, Bahrain Victorious revealed that Teuns would be leaving to join his new squad due to having no races lined up between now and the end of the season. The real reasons for this mid-season switch are yet to be revealed, but it's certainly a news item to keep an eye on. Meanwhile, Bike Exchange, Quickstep and Alpecin-Deceuninck have also been busy on the men's side of things. Bike Exchange signed Ineos' Eddie Dunbar, Jumbo-Visma's Chris Harper and Bardiani's Filippo Zanna, as well as 2 youngsters from Trinity Racing, Rudy Port and Blake Quick, who has perhaps the best name for a cyclist since Colombian winner Anacona. Quickstep have brought in Jan Hurt from Intermarché, Casper Pedersen from DSM and Tim Merlier from Alpecin. The arrival of Merlier is great for that Belgian team, who've been missing a top sprinter for years. Top Belgian sprinter, Of course, you can't fart for sprinters in that team otherwise. Alpecin-Deceuninck will try to plug the hole left by the departing Merlier with Caden Groves from Bike Exchange, a promising Aussie sprinter. They've also signed Soren Krauh-Andersen from DSM and Quintin Hermans from Intermarché, two guys who go very well in one-day races. It also appears as though Ashleigh Moolman-Pasio may be postponing her plans to retire at the end of the season, if a recent report by Wielerflits is to be believed. The Dutch news outlet is reporting that the South African is going to continue racing for at least one more season, perhaps with her having to quit the recent Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift through illness before the summit finish that pretty much had her name on it. You'd think perhaps that's acting as the reason for her to do one more year. An injury update now, and good news for Primoz Roglic fans. The three-time Vuelta winner posted a picture of himself on Instagram on Thursday showing that he had finally returned to training following a few weeks off due to that back injury from the Tour de France. Now, it's not yet confirmed that he will ride La Vuelta and go for a fourth title, but the signs are looking better, at least, that he'll be there. He is on the Jumbo-Visma provisional start list, but then so too is Rowan Dennis, and he's just had to pull out of the Commonwealth Games, having been admitted to hospital for tests. And we wish him a speedy recovery. Speaking of provisional Vuelta start lists, I said last week that Egan Bernal was on the roster for Ineos Grenadiers, and now he's not, sadly. But with the likes of Evenepoel, Simon Yates, Carapaz, Hindley, Alaphilippe, Landa and Valverde all set to start La Vuelta, we are in for one heck of a race. We will, of course, be showing all 21 stages live and ad-free on GCN Plus between August the 19th and September the 11th. Territory restrictions will apply, so of course do check that you can watch it where you are. Between now and then, the first ever Tour of Scandinavia will kick off tomorrow and see the women's peloton head out on a dynamic 6-day tour of Denmark, Sweden and Norway. We'll also be bringing you another race in Scandinavia this week, the men's Arctic race of Norway. This one is only 4 stages long and doesn't feature a big mountain, but the racing should be just as exciting, with some big sprint battles expected between Dylan Groenewegen and Alexander Kristoff. Also starting next week are the European Champs. We'll be covering the elite road events, so time trial and road races. Just like last year, we'll also be showing all of the track races as well, plus the cross-country mountain bike and BMX freestyle events. And finally, we'll have a couple of one-dayers for you too. The Euro Metropole Tour on Wednesday the 10th and Le Poly-Normand on Sunday the 14th. And lastly, as if that's not enough for you to watch this week, we've got a cracking documentary on GCN Plus as well. We know you love your racing, so make sure you check out the Cheap Bike Challenge Presenter Race. What happens when 5 ex-pro cyclists are given 200 quid to spend on a new bike and then set a load of challenges? Ashleigh Moolman-Pasio also features in that, and perhaps her experience of filming with us has scared her of post-retirement media appearances enough to also motivate her to re-sign for one more year. On that note, we will leave you for another week. Dan's back next week, while I will be trying desperately to emulate Eddie Merckx's Pyrenean epic stage win from 1969 on a full replica bike and in full replica kit. Wish me luck. Bye for now.